Cool. Before I hand it over to Carl, round 3, we have 648 applications, 30 million OP tokens that are going towards public goods, 145 batch holders that will vote on how to allocate these tokens, and 1 month of voting from November 6th till December 7th. That's a super brief, rough overview. We entered a time transformer, and I'll hand it over to you, Carl.
All right. Time transformer. Okay. You go to the first slide. So you may be wondering, what is retroactive public goods funding and why does it exist? Well, first off, it exists because Ethereum, we started out kind of working in Ethereum. We've been doing it for a long time and realized that Ethereum has a public goods funding problem. It is hard to get funding for building impactful open source software. Now, the traditional way to kind of approach this has been the, just grants programs. You have a grants program that, open source developers will apply to, and then they will evaluate, the grants giving org will evaluate and, give a grant. Okay, but then, honestly, Vitalik realized that there was another, and actually many others have realized this before, that instead of having a single kind of top-down funding organization, we can create a marketplace where impact gets funded, impactful projects get funded. How does this work? Well, instead of funding something up front, which if you go to the next slide, may not actually have the impact that the grants giving org wants. In other words, the grants giving org is limited by their limited perspectives and limited ability to allocate capital to projects. Well, instead of doing it that way, we can instead wait until the impact has occurred and then retroactively reward those people, thereby creating an incentive for builders to build impactful works, but also for investors to invest in builders who are building open source impactful software. So we don't need to have a bunch of these different projects that are building out things and worried about a business model, not being able to be profitable, not being able to get investment. No, you can focus on building the most impactful open source software because that is actually now profitable. Okay, so if we go to the next slide, we can kind of start talking about, okay, how do we actually evaluate impact? And how do we redistribute? Like, how do we provide these rewards for people to who are building this work? And so we actually realized, not in round 1, but at the end of round 1 and in going into round 2, we realized that it's a little bit tricky to give out these retroactive public goods funding rewards, in that we had to think about things, not only how much impact the project had, but how much profit that project has already made from that impact. So I mean profit as in either money or opportunities or things that are returned to the creators of the project, not necessarily investment with the expectation of a return, because that's more of a commitment. But there's all of these things can be incorporated into profit, which is like some kind of number about how much people are benefiting personally from that that project. And we should be prioritizing projects that have had less profit and have had more impact, and giving those projects the retro funding rewards. And so this we had to do this analysis. It kind of came naturally in round 1. And so we've been further evolving it. And so the whole point of this, by the way, is so that eventually we will have enough so that we can always make sure that impact equals profit. And the fun thing is that this is actually, I think, a kind of like, it is a selfish thing to do to make sure that everyone is justly rewarded, because that means that in the community, building things, you already know that you will be rewarded for your impact, and that benefits the entire community because the things you're building, well, they're public goods. So if we go to the next slide, we are trying to make this system where we not only have retroactive public goods funding, but we have an entire, ecosystem and platform and protocol which generates the capital that is then redistributed for retroactive public goods funding to the people who built the open source protocol. And then those benefits actually go back into making the protocol a better, happier place. And so you get this nice cycle where actually we can create an open source, collective protocol, etc., that funds open source software and really builds out that Ethereum vision and that Ethereum future and gets us to Ether's Phoenix, which, of course, the thing that we're all hoping to do is live in a world where, people are, that human beings are judging impact. So we're making sure that humans are empowered, and B, that when you have an impact on other human beings, that is the most profitable thing to do. So, positive sum over extractive, and, let's build the world together. So, thanks y'all.
Thank you, Carl, for this brief background on where we're coming from. I may just crash the kind of agenda here and go a bit deeper into how we look at impact equals profit. So the foundation put out this framework around how to apply impact equals profit some time ago, and this is really the framework you can apply when you do your voting as a batch holder, or you can make up your own framework and apply this. So this is really just outlining kind of some of the core ideas, but it's really up to batch holders to apply them or modify them as they see fit. All of this is in the batch holder manual. I'll probably come back to this in this call a couple of times. Like, the batch holder manual is your single place where you can find all the information relating to voting in RetroPGF 3. I'll just post this in the chat. And so if you want to dive deeper into this, you can jump into this framework. You can go into the forum and provide your perspective on this. I think most importantly, Carl, correct me if I'm wrong, the important aspects that we outline here: retroactive means that there are no forward-looking assumptions. So only past impact is considered. Even though it sounds like Carl's like shooting shots against proactive grants orgs, we have a great grants council in the Token House who's doing a really good job. And so if a project is in need of an upfront grant, that is the kind of great mechanism we have created in the Token House. And future contributions can be and should be rewarded in future RetroPGF rounds. In this framework, we describe impact measures the outcomes that were created for the collective. Impact does not consider the inputs that go into the contribution. So essentially, like, how many people have worked on something is not really impact, but it's like the input that went into a contribution. And on the profit side, really what we're talking about when we're saying profit is not this classical definition of money earned after paying costs, but it's really the total value a contributor has received from the Optimism Collective for their contributions and their impact. That just as a brief shill of this impact equals profit framework, which you can use. Any closing words on impact equals profit, Carl?
Nope. Just it's unintuitive that, giving out money without any expectations is a good thing, but it is a great thing. We just got to make sure that we're giving it out justly. So.
Cool. You might be wondering how these rounds come to be. What are we doing here? Or are we just making this stuff up as we go along? And that is absolutely not the case. How RetroPGF is working is as a continuous experiment, and we're pretty serious about this. It's not just an excuse. It's like actually what this program is all about, which is we're running these experiments and we're trying to learn as much as possible, identify the pain points, the most important pain points from each round, and then we take these learnings, create another RetroPGF round based on them, and iterate as long as we need to until we are at this utopian state of Ether's Phoenix. And so what this looked like in the last round is we collected all this feedback from batch holders and projects, put out this super long post on all the learnings we had in this round. And then as we went into round 3, we picked up on these learnings and really focused on what solutions can we find to these specific pain points. And of course, we want to do this again. And what is the most important at this stage is that you provide feedback on the experience. This form is also linked in the batch holder manual, but just to call out that providing feedback in this process as a batch holder is a really big contribution that you can make to improving RetroPGF. And this is like very transparent. So we quoted a lot of feedback was quoted in the previous learnings and reflections articles. We hope to do this moving forward. So if you ever run into something that you feel like should be iterated on or that is a pain point, you can provide feedback in the forum or use this small form that we have for feedback. All right. This is kind of the high level of how you evaluate projects. Impact equals profit is at the heart of this idea. For round 3, we have 4 categories that projects self-selected to kind of categorize their impact. So you see the OP stack here, collective governance, developer ecosystem, and user experience and adoption. You might be wondering how you can use these categories in reviewing and evaluating projects. And one of the batch holders, Lao Namu, has done great work in diving deeper into these specific categories and defining what impact looks there. A bunch of other works. Laura, do you want to take it from here and tell us about the impact evaluation framework?
Perfect. Yes, I can take it from here. Thank you so much. And it actually fits in really nicely into what Jonas was mentioning in terms of how valuable how valuable it is that batch holders provide feedback on the RetroPGF process. This came out as one of the main hurdles that we identified from the last round, in which there were several discussions between batch holders on what is impact. How do we define impact for optimism? How are we supposed to make this decision on how to attribute OP tokens? And at the time it was votes for projects if we don't have a clear image of what impact stands for within the optimism ecosystem. So the impact evaluation framework was born as a resource to support on the challenges that were faced by batch holders last year, mainly in identifying what is impact within each one of these main categories. So in comparison for the last round, in this round, we're going even further narrowing in the scope. So we have these 4 rounds that Jonas was mentioning, in which we're looking at different aspects and different components of the optimism ecosystem. And what the framework does is it provides additional information for each one of the categories. And this information includes both tools, questions, terms that you can all leverage in your evaluation process as you go through each one of the applications and each one of the categories. I want to highlight that this resource is born out and was generated through a series of interviews with different stakeholders within the optimism ecosystem. So this includes both the perspective of different teams within the Optimism Foundation, different teams within OP Labs, but also different members of the delegates and of batch holders to get an encompassing idea of how can we identify what's impactful and where we want the optimism ecosystem to move towards. And therefore, what is it that is generating impact that is taking us closer to the different goals that we want to achieve in each one of these categories. And now looking into the specifics of how can you use the impact evaluation framework, you will find this information that Jonas is displaying on the Figma for each one of the categories. So first you will find a definition of what is impact for each one of the categories. So each one of the categories has its own Notion page. You'll find a definition for the category, a definition of impact, and then also very useful is a little bit of context in terms of numbers, so that you can frame when an application is telling you, I got this many developers into the ecosystem, okay, which dashboards and what specific numbers do I already know of how large is the Optimism developer ecosystem? Second, you'll find stakeholders. And this is very important so that as we're going through the applications, we are thinking of who is this contribution benefiting? And also who can be the audiences, who could be the audiences that are enabling this impact for others. After that, you'll find relevant terms. And these terms are associated with how can you also start comparing the contributions between the different applications. You're making smaller subsets to make it easier for batch holders as well to compare between applications. And in these relevant terms, you find a definition, questions to guide how you can think of additional ways in which the impact may be described in the application, examples, and then the most important part is you will also find metrics. So what are some metrics that projects may be showcasing to display what is the impact that they are having? And in the metric garden, you will also find whether this is a high signal metric in terms of how much information are you able to verify in terms of the impact that the project is showcasing versus the metric that they are using. And if it's a good match as well to showcase the impact within the Optimism ecosystem. So as I mentioned, this is all information metrics that you can leverage to then build your own evaluation framework for the applications that you're going through. And I think it was mentioned before, but the expectation is not for each batch holder to go through the 660 plus applications, but we're leaning into our own expertise and into the expertise of other batch holders. So this framework is also serving for that.
Thanks, Laura. Yes, this framework is supposed to be shared publicly. Let us know if you can't access it. It's part of the batch holder manual, which I will just plug to another shameless plug of. Cool. All right. So this is how you can think about evaluating projects. The high-level framework of impact equals profit, the different categories that are part of this round. And if you really want to dive deep, you can use the impact evaluation framework to go into each of the categories and find out more about what impact looks like there. On this segue of how to vote. Briefly going to cover what voting looks like, what lists are, and then we're going to hear from some batch holders from round 2. Cool. You will hear about this later as well. We have great voting applications that should make this job easier. This round of RetroPGF, you're voting by expressing how much OP each application should receive to fill the gap between the amount of impact they created for the collective and the profit they received. So essentially, how many RetroPGF rewards should each applicant receive? This is what you're saying when you're voting. So a really bad graphic to communicate this is what you see here. Is we're all trying to express how much is the gap between the impact and profit, and essentially how many OP tokens should an applicant receive so their impact equals their profit. What we're doing in this round is the results are calculated using the median, and each application needs to receive a minimum quorum of votes from 17 batch holders to qualify. So what we're doing here, this is like some visuals around this, is we're taking the middle value, we're applying the median, and this is then taken as the result for how much OP this applicant should receive. And in the end, we normalize the results to match the 30 million OP allocation. Important to highlight here is you can allocate up to 30 million OP across all applications, and you can allocate between 0 and 5 million OP to a single applicant. One of the important things to highlight here is if you're not voting on an application, you're expressing indifference as to how much OP this applicant should receive. In other words, if you're not voting on an application because you don't know about this application or you don't want to vote on it, the application is not being penalized for this. And what you're doing is you're abstaining from voting on them. And one of the confusions I sometimes see is a statement where it's like, if the project did not provide value or impact to the collective, I will not consider them in my voting, which I don't think is intentionally what you want to do. I think if you think a project has provided no impact to the collective, you actually want to express this in your voting. So different to the past round, where in round 2, where you distributed your votes and you essentially voted 0 on everything you didn't put in your ballot. This round, if you want to express that if you want to vote on a project and you want to express that you think they didn't provide value, you should express this via voting. So you can vote that the project should receive between 0 and 5 million OP to align their impact and profits. As in previous rounds, votes are private, and they are being reviewed by the Optimism Foundation and trusted third parties for code of conduct violations. We're going to do some sampling. More of this is in the Batfolder manual. It's a theme by now. But votes remain private. And we really hope this allows you to express whatever you want to express in your voting. Vote truthfully without fearing what it would look like if your votes become public. That's kind of the implication behind private voting. So far on voting, I'm going to cover what lists are, and then we gonna take a quick moment for Q&A, just because I want to make sure what I'm saying is kind of understandable. The common question we got, and which was also like a big challenge and piece of feedback from round 2, is how am I supposed to review 600 plus applications? That is a whole lot. And the answer to this is you are not responsible for reviewing all these applications. So nobody expects from you as a batch holder that you're taking the time to review all the applications and you know everything about every contribution type and every type of impact. I think nobody expects you to be an expert in like the OP stack and developer tooling and like education at the same time. And so how we're tackling this with a new experiment in round 3 is what we call lists. And lists are essentially a flexible form of vote delegation. They allow you to focus on reviewing the projects that you're highly knowledgeable about and share your findings, your suggested OP allocation for these applications with other batch holders. And then you can leverage the lists created by batch holders that have expertise in other areas to inform your voting. So in the previous round, we did this via Excel sheets that you shared with others, and we did this in like forum threads. And this round, it's just lists are creating this experience within the voting tooling you'll be using, and we'll make it much easier to share with other batch holders how you evaluated a certain set of projects. The idea is each list should reference some methodology for allocating OP to each application. So an example of this is you could pick up the impact evaluation framework and follow this, or make up your own framework. A really bad example I put up here, just to not bias anybody with real projects, what a list looks like is you have your about section where you can just describe the type of projects you're evaluating, as well as in your title. you can provide a bit of background on like why you're knowledgeable within this area. So let's say you create a list about OP Stack tooling or developer education or conferences. You can put this in the title and then tell others why you're knowledgeable in this area in the About section. And then for impact evaluation, you can describe how you came up with these allocations of OP tokens to projects. And you're super free to use whatever framework you want to use here. The idea is just describe what you're doing to other batch holders so they can understand. And then you will have the projects here and an OP allocation for each project. Other batch holders can then come along and leverage these lists in their voting to inform how they review projects. So that is a rough idea of how do we tackle all these like 600 plus applications. Go out and like find the area you're really knowledgeable about, and create a list of projects that you reviewed, and help other batch holders review these projects, and use lists of others. Okay, I think that was some rambling. Questions on the voting and lists? Okay. In the silence, we can see what the Ethers Phoenix drawing is doing.
There were two questions.
William, do you want to quickly recap that point? I don't think I quite understand it. To the sleeper, yes, you can share your proposed allocation publicly as you see fit. The final median scores will be published. So unlike last round, we're looking into how we can anonymize the votes, maintain batch holder privacy, but also allow for more insights into the voting behavior. Alejandro had a question. Can I allocate an OP, an amount of my unallocated OP as per a list I like on an area I'm not knowledgeable in? That's exactly the idea. So if you're, let's say you're really knowledgeable in one area, but you're not knowledgeable about like OP stack tooling at all. There will be a list from a batch holder who's really knowledgeable in that area. And you might know that batch holder and trust them with their expertise. You can then use their list of projects and review what they've done to make sure you agree with it, and leverage this list in your voting to allocate OP. And you can also, when you go through this experience, we will see this later, edit the allocations that they've done. So it's really like a free tool where you can replicate or edit the allocations within the list. The good question, do the 4 categories come into play in voting? The categories are really purely for categorization and helping us make sense when we do impact evaluation. They don't have any formal role in the voting. So there is no such thing as like an amount of OP allocated to each category or similar. They're really just like a categorization labeling scheme to help you discover projects and evaluate their impact. Okay, last questions before I spend too much time on this. Yes, there is a UI element to help you allocate OP using lists. We will see some nice demos of this later. Other question, if a project does not meet the quorum, they will not qualify for RetroPGF rewards. You will see in one of the demos how you can discover in the voting interface what the current state of the quorum of the project is. So you will be able to prioritize projects in your voting which are not likely to meet the quorum, or essentially you are able to prioritize projects to help them to vote on projects that other batch holders are not paying attention on. The idea here really is we want all applicants to meet the quorum. Okay, this was a big kind of information dump. Might seem overwhelming. I thought what's helpful, because most of the batch holders are new to RetroPGF and just started being a batch holder a few months ago. It would be great to hear from previous batch holders. We have Cassidy and Jenny with us, who worked together in round 2. I put the tweet thread here, like just sneaked it into the fake jam. Maybe you guys could briefly talk about how did you tackle this challenge of reviewing all these projects in round 2?
Cool. Yeah, thanks. I'll link the tweet, I guess, as well in the chat. I mean, basically what it looks like is we tried to do lists and categories before lists and categories existed. So I guess now we have these functionalities built in a little bit more, which is nice. And the impact framework as well. We started, I don't know, by looking at GitHub stars, YouTube plays and subscriptions, Twitter followers. So those things are all more explicit, it looks like, in the new impact evaluation. But basically we touched every project last time. This time I think we'll try, we won't. We would even try to, but wouldn't probably hit it. But yeah, so basically the categories we chose were open source tools, infra and applications and protocols, developer content, and educational content. That was after looking at kind of a brief overview of all of them. So that might be something that you guys might want to do when you're looking at lists, is kind of like take some, maybe do the shuffle and like just look at kind of what kind of project categories will develop organically based on what projects have applied. And then, yeah, like we did impact, we tried to measure impact relatively across the application. So we did like a small, medium, and large. And once we had looked at probably 10 projects, you could kind of normalize and say, okay, this one's clearly more impactful than this one. And I think that you'll probably end up, I mean, the impact evaluation guide has that as well, but you'll probably start to be able to do that as you review applications. I honestly would recommend just like going in randomly and just looking at some and just seeing what you think you might do for some of these projects, because I think just looking at it first will help you evaluate like the projects down the line. Yeah, I don't know. I recommend teaming up with folks. I think 2 people is good. Probably 5 is probably too many. I don't know. Your mileage may vary. Yeah, I think we ended up allocating to about half of the project last time. So excited to see this one. If anyone has any specific questions, also feel free to like DM me or whatever. But yeah, I think that's about it.
Thank you, Jenny. I hope this time around it's not like reviewing 195 projects, but less. So I thought this was like super impressive. The commitment we saw in the last round to really tackle all of them, and I hope lists make this easier. Nice segue here is like, how can you find people that you can collaborate with on creating lists? And we have some calls and workshops to make this happen. Throughout this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you should have all these invites in your calendar. There will be workshops around impact evaluation and creating lists. It's more of a hackathon where you just run through the process of evaluating some projects and creating a list with fellow batch holders within the category that you feel the most knowledgeable about. So these calls will be helpful to like get a grip of what you can do here, how you can evaluate projects and create lists, but also useful to meet other batch holders that are looking to review the same types of projects as you, so you can collaborate on doing this. So Laura is hosting these calls, and I think there's a note also in the channel on like the specific times, and you should have the invites in your calendar. If you don't, drop me a DM. We'll also do batch holder co-working towards the middle of voting, I think November 20th, just to have a session where you can jam with other batch holders, solve each other's problems, resolve questions, all these kinds of things. A quick recommendation on how to spend the time, because it's a month, it's more time than we ever had for RetroPGF voting, is I would recommend spending the first 2 weeks on creating lists. So collaborate with other batch holders through these workshops or async on creating lists, evaluating projects. And then you will, as you will publish these lists, towards the second half of voting, there will be lots of lists which will help you in your own voting. And so this is a bit of like how you can split the time, and like the first 2 weeks, think about creating lists. In the second 2 weeks, think about like iterating on your ballots and votes by using the lists of others. That is our quick section on how to vote. Just calling out the conduct. We had some discussions on this in the chat already. You will find guidance on this in the batch holder manual. Batch holders should not vote for organizations where they expect any portions of funds to flow to them or any projects from which they derive income. You should, if you have an anticipated conflict of interest or an actual one, disclose this. And I think the safest call is, when in doubt, just call it out. We have a beautiful long thread here with people that have flagged their conflicts of interest. Not to go into this here, but this can be super simple. You can just flag that you will not be voting for certain projects because of a possible conflict of interest. Another that is generally rules around the code of conduct. You will also find this in the batch holder manual, and you find the optimism code of conduct linked there. Happy to answer any questions around this once we get to Q&A. This is pretty much how you evaluate projects, how you vote. And now you ask, how are you going to do this in practice, which is through all these great applications and toolings that are being built by different teams. It's kind of a Murphy's Law kind of day where we're running into issues with Cloudflare that are an ongoing problem, but I think we're optimistic it's going to work out. We're going to do quick 4-minute demos from each team on what they've built and how you can use it. And then we're going to jump into Q&A. First off, so we have to just give background, we have 2 voting applications. You can use either or both in your voting. They provide this pretty much the same functionality. They just make different decisions on the user experience of voting. So it's like this multiplicity approach, which is quite nice. Agora built the backend infrastructure behind this. Maybe I can hand it over to you guys. I don't know who. Oh God, I'm not sharing the.
Hey. I'm here. Yeah.
Yes, you're on. Keep going.
Cool. I'll give the quick Agora demo today. I think folks here probably already familiar with Agora from some of the token house activities that we've done. We of course jumped at the opportunity to also support the Citizen House activities here. One thing that I'll note is that we, as Jonas mentioned, are having some issues with Cloudflare, where they've been having intermittent outages since last Thursday. So all the engineering team is on the phone with them trying to figure this out. So that's left me with you guys. So hopefully you guys will be okay in my hands with this demo. All right, so here we go. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'll be showing you a combination of the live site as well as some of the dev environment where I have access to some of the badge holder UI. I am not a badge holder, so you'll have to pretend to walk through it with me as if I was one on dev. So folks here might be familiar with sort of this landing page on Agora. And one thing that we've added here as a little bonus is a little citizens badge to badge holders here, so that since these are all attestations anyway, you can now, as a bonus, check out citizens on top of delegates. So what we're here to do, though, is to vote on RetroPGF. So you'll notice on the top level tab, you can simply navigate to it by clicking RetroPGF. And then you will be presented with a list of projects as well as lists. So as Jonah said, lists are going to be a huge part of the RetroPGF 3 voting. They are now a little empty, so I expect that everybody here will be having a good time filling out the lists in the coming days. But for now, that's how you check out the projects and the lists. And the projects are sorted by shuffle so that we give everybody an equal opportunity to get exposed to your attention. Okay, so this is just an example of what lists looks like. It's a little sad, it's a little empty, but Griff, we expect you to do good work here and populate this list soon. Okay, so now I'll jump into the dev environment. So notice that this is not the real app. I have made myself a badge holder for the purpose of this demo. So if you're a badge holder, you simply have to come here and sign in. When you are signed in, we will ask you to verify your address, and then you will be recognized as a badge holder, where you will be presented with the badge holder UI, which gives you this nice little card here with your ballot. And then you can go to any project and ta-da, you will have a badge holder only button to add to your ballot. So I am on one of my favorite projects, Base Paint, and I'm really excited about how they've been pushing on-chain art forward. And so I think I want to put them in my ballot. All I do is tap on my add to ballot button and then assign them some amount of OP and then add to ballot. And then they will show up in your ballot right here. You can also do the same thing via lists. Same idea. If you tap on the list and click add to ballot, it will add all the projects. It will propose to add all of the projects in that list to your ballot. And then you can tweak the amounts or remove some projects yourself. So that's the really quick overview of voting experience on Agora. As Jonah said, the backend is a single backend that we maintain for all the voting apps. So you are free to use our application or the super modular implementation of the application, and it will all be safe. You can even use both if you want. Everything is synced up to this single database. So that's quickly it. I don't know if folks have questions. Otherwise, I'll cede my time.
Thank you, Tong. This looks great. We're, as said, we're having some issues right now, but there will be an update as soon as they are resolved, which should be soon TM. We have another team that built a voting application, the friends from West. Carl, I think. Carl, you're here?
Hey, how's it going? Good to see some familiar faces here. So I've been part of building another voting application for Team West with Owoki and Christina from Super Modular. And yeah, let's get right into it. All right, so first we just connect the wallet and sign a message to get an authentication token, which will be used so we can start building a ballot and then proceed or continue on another device. So here we have the projects list. We can filter by categories. Different views. We can also search for projects. Add it to the ballot. Here we can test the ballot, view lists. We can see the lists that this account has liked. Let's go into this one. And we can make changes to the allocations here. Let's see these in our ballot. Here we can also search, sorting. And if we go back to the list again, we can see that if we try to add a list that already has projects in our ballot, we see the recommended list amount and our allocated amount. So we can make adjustments to this before. And then when we're done, we submit the ballot. So we sign all the votes that we have. And there we go. I can also show the create list UI. We can add projects here. And then we send a transaction. And once that is done, we'll see a confirmation page. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Shout out to both Agora and West. This only came together within the last 3 months. It happened through the magic of RFPs that where anybody could apply to build this tooling. Overall, super excited. I think just to recap for people that are new to RetroPGF, the last round 6 months ago, we had like a super long form with 195 projects where you inputted percentages. We send people through a lot, and I hope so this time now everything's much easier. You might have seen in Carl's demo, there was this thing where it says pairwise, which is another exciting tool which you can use to create lists. This actually came out of a mission proposal for the token from the made to the token house, and Griff is already sharing his screen. Go for it, Griff.
Well, you gave me such a clear intro. It was so easy. Thank you, Jonas. And yeah, I got to have a lot of fun with that spreadsheet last round, and I really wanted to make it easy for people to compare projects and rank projects here. And one of the easiest ways to rank projects is pairwise comparison. And just judging projects in general, it's like when you have 2 options and you can just say which one deserves more funding, this or that, and try to simplify this complex process into many small decisions. And so that's what we did with pairwise. So pairwise is not a voting tool. It's only a list generation tool. And its goal, you can read the home screen. I'm not going to go through it, but we're trying to gamify the process. We're trying to make it fun so that it's not just like all this hard work, but actually it's fun, right? So there's lots of intro things that no one's ever going to read, so I accept that. But the main thing here is that we're categorizing projects in a very strong, opinionated way. And you'll have to forgive us because our opinions are not the best. But we wanted to make, we basically made 30 categories and put every project in only one category. And then we divided those 30 categories up into these 5 areas. We used the top 4 categories, and then we made a special category for individuals. So we're using the traditional categories that everyone marked, but then we added individuals as its own separate category. And if you go in here, then you can see that here's 6 different categories that you can play with, right? And so I already started one for asset management. And so I'll just keep going because you have to get a good result with pairwise, you can't just do 2 or 3, and I only have a few minutes. So I already did like 30 pairwise comparisons to get some real data. And when you're coming in here, you'll be like, oh, which is that? Well, I don't know any of these projects, right? Well, don't just pick one, right? You go into the details, you read about it. We're going to improve this detail page to have everything that the normal page would have, like the description would have, because right now it's missing a few like the impact metrics and stuff. But that will be improved. In fact, in general, forgive us. It's not really ready yet for prime time. Give us till Thursday is about our estimate. We're doing some major UX improvements. And also we found out that we're like missing 5 projects out of the list. So like, you know, it's chaos over the weekend, but we'll get this thing nailed down and make sure that it's perfect. And by Thursday, you should be able to use it for real. But here you just pick one or the other, right? And hopefully you're reading up on these projects. And you can also pick abstain. So abstain will mean you're not voting for either project. And the way this pairwise voting is working is that if you vote that one is better than the other, this one will be given some OP in your list that you're creating. If you never say that a project, behind the scenes, I should say, for pairwise, we're using kind of like the ELO scoring algo. So it's the same algo that they use in sports and like chess. So you can kind of imagine each one of these pairwise comparisons as a chess match. So, okay, well, A Crypto won this one. I don't know either of these projects, and I don't want to give either of them OP. So I'm saying abstain. Sorry to these projects if you're in the room. Oh, Roki, easy win. Taxman, for sure. You know, and so each one is like winning a chess match, and then you will actually get a score. Now, again, we went, as opposed to the other applications, we went very opinionated. So by default, we gave each category an amount, but that amount is just just correlated to the number of projects in that category. And it can be edited, and it should be edited. But we wanted to start with a real amount. So you can go in here and see how much OP is allocated to each category. These top level categories, again, it's just average per project as the default amount so that you have something to play with there. But you can edit these things just by clicking edit. You can change this amount by changing that, or you can change this amount. Roki's winning, but you know, maybe Taxman, and I'm surprised that's so high. I'm just gonna like throw that down. I apologize to this Taxman, and you can see it normalizes the rest of these projects. And then I'm like, okay, Cap, I don't actually know that project. I'm just gonna give it 0. Again, I apologize for these projects, but then you're editing these. If you really like the percentages that they're at, there's a lock button. So you can lock these and you can edit this percentage and it'll go down. Now, we're gonna edit this to make it so that you edit OP and get rid of the percentages. But once you have it how you like it, you can go back here and let's just create a list. And when you create the list, it will load hopefully there. I don't know if you guys can see my MetaMask, but it costs about a penny. And once it submits, you'll get a little box here that says you can view it in Agora or Super Modular. And what's really cool and the most important thing about Pairwise, or the most interesting thing about what we're creating for Pairwise, is that you will get a standardized title name and a standard, and you can see the author. So these projects in each category, in this case, these 14 projects that are categorized under asset management and portfolio tools, you'll see Griff's submission for just these 14 projects. And that'll be one list. And those projects will not appear in any other Pairwise list. So you can really just you can actually delegate to whoever you believe to be the authority in that category, and by just picking their list and adding it to them. So anyone who, and I also want to encourage you to really focus on categories that you have expertise in, because that's where Pairwise really shines. It can let people express their expertise and only categorize 20, 50 projects. Okay, sorry, I went too long, Jonas.
All good, thank you, Griff. You see, we have a lot of exciting experiments here on how you can approach voting. Coming out of all the pain we went through in the previous rounds, we now have like a big explosion of useful things. We're running over here. I do want to give the time to Open Source Observer, who also have built something great. If you can stick on for another few minutes, I think Carl won't disappoint with their demo.
Hey everyone, so yes, I'm the third Carl in line today, but I'll just do a quick 1 or 2 minute thing. So we actually really focused on trying to get more data about projects. And so we've taken all of the information that was given in the applications, the contribution links, the impact metrics, and we've tried to index that data, at least for all of the open source software projects. And so we built out a data set which looks at projects starting with ones that applied during RetroPGF 1 through 2, as well as 3, and brought all of this data about what kind of GitHub activity they have, what type of on-chain activity they have, what types of work artifacts they produce for the community. And in addition to having some analysis that we can share here, we also have like a static snapshot, which will give you data on all of the projects. This is just a quick one that I threw together today, but we'll be able to give snapshots of different impact metrics and activity metrics for different projects. And then the even cooler thing that we're working on right now is a dashboard that allows you to explore all this data. So here's an example. It takes the on-chain data for synthetics, users, monthly actives, different types of transactions, all of their GitHub activity. Here's another example of a project that has NPM packages, so you can see package downloads. We could even trace downstream impact from people that are using those packages in their dApps. We have an API that's still kind of not well documented, but we'll be able to give access to people who want to use this for creating lists or for diligencing projects. And then just to give you a quick taste of what this looks like, here's an example of just a list that I created over the weekend, where it looks at all of the NPM, all of the projects that have a NPM library. And so you can look at, I think in this case, it's looking at number of downloads and so on. So you can use that to create your own lists. Like what Griff was showing, these also generate like the metadata, which is required to power the list and share the allocation. And all of this right now is available on our GitHub repo, and I'll be typing up a governance post later today, which will give people all of these links so they can use them for voting and for making their voting or their lists over the course of RetroPGF. Sorry, bit of stream of consciousness. Hope we did that in time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Carl. So to just put this, we have raised hands. Francisca, go for it. Or we don't. To just put this together, you have the impact evaluation framework, which outlines what types of impact you should and could reward. OS Observer is a great tool to actually find metrics on this impact, find out how much on-chain activity are these projects seeing, how many NPM package downloads do they have, et cetera, et cetera. Pairwise helps you to create lists, and you have 2 applications you can use to iterate on your ballot and vote. That's kind of the overview. Thank you all for the great demos. I think we're gonna give it maybe like, I think one important thing that came up in the, I'm just gonna clarify one important thing in the questions. Then I think we're gonna end this. Voting 0 OP on a project is different from abstaining. It's an actual vote. So if you think they should deserve only 0 OP, you should express this in your voting. Yes, I think that was the important thing I wanted to clarify. Feel free to drop anything in the channel where you feel like highly confused about. We can continue this in the batch holder channel in Telegram/Discord. I hope all of you are excited for round 3 of RetroPGF. I'm very excited. Communicate with batch holders in the channels. You can drop your questions there. We will have a lot of workshops that you can attend and different meetings. If you want to jam with other people, this is going to go for a whole month. I'm going to see all of you, a lot of you walk around in Istanbul, and I'm going to track you down. And yes, we're going to update you once the Cloudflare issue is resolved and the voting apps are live. Okay, that was our long kickoff call. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.